Good morning, Upper Sixth. So, in response to my email to you, your group, last week, a couple of you have come back with some requests. So, I'll look at B2B, B2C, C2C in context with the recycled clothing industry a little bit later this week. But for now, we're going to focus on motivation theory. This is something that all of you know inside and out, and that's one of my worries. You might go onto autopilot and not really read the question because you'll get all excited when you see a motivation theory question. The key to this is think about the workers, think about the type of work that they might do, think about how much money they're already on, for example, job stability. So you look for things in the case study. There's normally more than one worker mentioned in the case study, not always. And we've got some example past paper questions here. So, for example, we've got the hook in here, which is obviously labour turnover, reduced labour turnover. We know it's fitness first. So this could be the fitness instructors. And in that year's research theme, we looked at self-employed versus employed. We've got employee performance here. So it's financial versus non-financial. Now, these types of questions, you've all practiced inside and out. Just make sure you think about the different workers in the case study. Okay, so there might be some people in this case that might be more interested in inventing a new fitness regime than they were a couple of extra quid, for example. You need to contextualize that around the theories. Choose your theories. That's fine. When we look at something like this, same year, we tend to see lots of motivational theory questions. There's quite a lot of them if you look through the past papers. This is a selection. And we can see the likely benefits to a company of using non-financial techniques. Well, however, some people might be motivated. So you're going to drop in a bit of theory into this. I can't remember how many marks this was, maybe 10 marks. So you're not going to write a lot about it, are you? But the motivation theory can help you structure your chains of argument. Then on to another 20 marker from 2020. So they want the need to focus on employee performance should use to improve customer satisfaction. So we can see that we want the staff to improve their performance to improve customer satisfaction. Financial versus non-financial. Pretty standard stuff. Then we've got this one, which is 2 benefits, a nice 8 marker there of using non-financial, however, financial. Okay? Thinking about the different types of workers. In this Admiral one, we're talking call centre workers. Are we talking managers with Aldi's? Are we talking about cashiers? Part-time seasonal workers? Are we talking about the managers who just are on quite a good salary and get a company car? They're going to be motivated in different ways. 2023, a bit more up to date here, and we can see non-financial, financial. Now, you can see why students get caught up in standardized approaches to this type of, especially the 20 markers. And that's because the majority of the past paper questions that you will practice in class are to do with financial, non-financial incentives. As another example, paper 3, we've got this one here. Okay, financial, non-financial. I might have got the year wrong on one of those, but never mind. So this was from last year's paper 1, I believe. And this caught a lot of students out. So when we've got here, improved motivation of delivery drivers, we know this is our hook. Okay, we know we're dealing with one group of people. However, in the case study, I think it mentions that because it's the gig economy, and people can pick and choose their hours. You might be a student, you might be doing this as a full-time career. In some ways, there may be a little bit of a difference in motivation there. But if you think about it, we've got delivery riders here. There was lots of information in there about piecework and a bonus in some ways for good satisfaction and all those sorts of things. Now, students that went onto autopilot made mistakes. So here's why we read the examiner reports, because they're gold dust. So we can see that lots of people knew about Taylor and Herzberg. However, there were some people that just started running on about Maslow and Mayo. Your counter-arguments to Taylor need to be a counter-argument for Taylor, not so much, let me tell you about what I've remembered about Maslow. So if you look past through some of the example answers in the exam report, you'll see that some people just decided to dump their knowledge of motivational theory onto a page, and it wouldn't have ended up well. So make sure you read the question. This is pros and cons in context of Taylor, pros and cons of Herzberg in context, and then evaluate these two options. That's obviously what we would have done with two P paragraphs, one in favour, one against, and recommend which one is more likely to improve the motivation of workers. Well, this will be short to medium term. However, in the future, hey ho, maybe we'll be thinking about other things. But here's feedback. I'm not going to show you any of the answers, but here's some feedback on a good answer. Okay, so you'll notice from this feedback, if you pause the video and read it, that it says focus on the specific employees. Who are they? What do they do? Is it part-time, flexible working, which is great motivator. However, what about job security? Okay, so what about the absence of money if I don't actually get any orders coming in, which Herzberg would clearly say is a hygiene factor. So you have to think about it, and Taylor would say make sure you're available for as many deliveries as possible because you'll earn more money. So think about the workers. This is the theme. Let's move on. So the request we had come through wasn't just, could you give me an overview of motivational theories? It was, could you compare and contrast, for instance, Taylor with other motivational theories? Because we might want to use Taylor for in favour of piecework, close supervision, manage with money. Don't trust your staff too much. Managers know everything. And how would I compare that to Herzberg? Well, remember, that sort of theory will work well with all of these. However, won't work well with this. Okay, so the last slide, I've done pros and cons. You can just pause it, screenshot it, stick in your notes for all of them, just in case you get this type of question come up. So this is what we know about Taylorism, scientific theory. You have to think about the age that this was around. This was Ford Motor Car Company. This is the era before and during the evolution of mass manufacture. If you look at some of the videos that are available for Ford Motor Car Company, you'll see that they were the first, by all accounts, to bring the machinery, the cars, to the workers and not the workers to the cars. Standardized processes, train people on specific tasks. It was all about maximizing efficiency and productivity, and actually the motivation of the workers seemed to be second place. And this theory says pay a fair wage and your staff will just get on with the job. And what Ford did, as we know from lessons, is because he kept having huge labour turnover in Detroit, the home of motor car companies at the time, and basically he doubled their wages. Okay, they had riots outside of the factory. They had people in the snow being hosed down with water by police because they just wanted these higher paid jobs. And because they doubled the money and the rest of the industry was not willing to follow at the time, they had enough workers. And if someone wasn't up to scratch, or they got bored, they left or they were fired, then they just replaced them with someone else. And they trained them on something quite monotonous. So they were easy to replace. So you didn't really need the skilled workers. So thinking about time and motion studies is finding out exactly what we can do to improve productivity. So in context with this year's research theme, it could be the process of cutting fabric. Yeah. Um, you know, we'll use a standardized sewing machines. So we'll train them up on one machine, which means if workers will move around the factory, they should be fine. Okay, so how can we standardize this to make sure that productivity is improving? There's less error rates. We're making more garments per hour. Think about those productivity formulas that we know and love. Now, I've already mentioned standardization of making sure we have the same sewing machines, the same patterns as much as possible. Look at the homogeneous clothing that we see in stores at the moment. There's very little difference between a lot of it. The fabrics might be slightly different, but the patterns look relatively the same quite a lot of the time. Think about the t-shirt from Adidas, for example. The colours, maybe they're different, but the logos possibly in the same place, and there's 10 different colours. Okay, think about how we can standardise stuff. Workers are working on specific tasks, so they will specialise in pattern making, for example, or sewing the products together, the fabrics together. And that's what they do 10 hours a day, every day, 6 days a week, and they're just really, really good at it. Okay, we've got that unconscious competence going on here. If we think about the levels of learning that we've talked about in class, and they just do it on autopilot and they do it to a very, very good standard. Okay, this could motivate them because they really know what they're doing. Job security. If they're specializing, maybe they're hard to replace if it is a skilled task. Piece rate, well, any commission structure can be, this isn't a commission structure in some ways, but can be a demotivator because the absence of money. Now, the problem with piece rate is if it's not linked to other metrics, for example, quality of garments, error rates, sewing standards. If it's only piece rate, well, go back and study post World War II Russia. And they were focused very much on output, 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 and the quality generally was shocking. If suddenly the quality dips because you're only focusing on piece rate, you're going to have problems, possibly. If workers are only motivated by money, I will find the shortest route to making as many t-shirts as possible, especially if my managers are not checking them for quality. Generally, piece rate is not just piece rate, it's linked to other quality metrics. Now, we know from Taylorism that managers know best. Managers will plan. Managers are the ones that understand the time and motion studies. They understand how all the different tasks link together to one great big strategic plan. They are the ones who plan, tell the staff what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and they will decide if there's any changes to be done. If you take Taylorism as at its raw core, then it sort of infers that the workers don't really have much of a say in what's going on. I'm thinking that some workers might be talking to managers, but if we take it raw, just the theory, managers know best, workers are lazy, don't trust them, and actually just supervise them very closely, or they will just do whatever they can to get away with doing the minimum they can get away with and still getting paid a fair wage. Theory X, according to someone else who we'll be talking about. Okay, so that's a whirlwind tour of that. And then we need to think about these time and motion studies. So we've got a summarized version of Taylor, and we've got some theorists that possibly agree with them. We're thinking that time and motion studies, getting the job done, just having the job is, that physiological and safety need. I need a job, I need pay, I need to be able to pay my rent, but we can't always default back to that. It's a very low level hierarchy of Maslow's theory. And remember, Maslow's all about aspiring towards self-actualization, even if we never achieve it, by the way, Go very careful of therefore achieving self-actualization when I've got a £5 pay rise. Number one, it's not self-actualization. But I might feel good because I've had a pay rise, esteem. It might be recognition from my manager that I'm doing well, love and belonging. Don't leap straight to self-actualization. I would much rather you didn't talk about it, to be honest with you, because it's one of those general terms that A-level students get excited over and unfortunately use incorrectly most of the time. Herzberg, if we're thinking about a hygiene factor, having a system in place, having procedures in place, following the time and motion studies might be seen as one of those hygiene factors because it gives me organization. And without organization and rules and procedures, I might be demotivated. But it's not going to motivate me just because someone else has worked out the best way to do something. Now, if we think about the ones that disagree, there's clearly a longer list here. You can see by the amount of white on the screen. So I've already mentioned that Maslow says we want to work towards the higher level stuff. And if we're thinking about motivating people according to Maslow, I want that recognition. I want that pat on the back from my manager saying, "Good t-shirt, Dobby. Well done to you." Herzberg would say, if we want to motivate people, working towards those motivators and not just focusing on the hygiene factors, that job enrichment, allowing me to think about the best way to make a t-shirt, to improve the standard so it doesn't, fall apart within 5 minutes. Thinking about that. So that job enrichment might just be the appreciation of doing a good job. It could be being consulted, in the best way of doing things and not just trusting my manager to know everything. Mayo will think about the importance of the relationship between the managers and the workers. So if you think about this, it's really important for that communication from the people that are the experts in sewing through to the managers that might have other skill sets, even though they'll have an appreciation of what is a good standard of t-shirt. But actually, Mayo would very much focus on the importance of those social relations. And if you don't have them, workers, according to Mayo, may get demotivated. Theory X, Theory Y. Well, Theory X is very much time and motion study. Tell me what to do because I'm lazy and basically I don't really want to work, to be honest with you. And I don't care if it's monotonous. I just want some pay. Yeah, very much Taylorism. But the Theory Y person needs that creativity, autonomy, and they're the sorts of people we might see more in creating the designs and improving practices. But there's always room for Theory X workers in a workplace. People clock in, they do a good job under supervision, and they clock out and they go home and they enjoy their lives. Okay? Don't think that Theory X people are bad. It might just be they don't live to work. They work to live. So if we're thinking about standardization of tools and techniques, so we can see how this might be one of those basic physiological needs. Maybe there's a potential for esteem because if I'm involved with being trained on it, I'm getting job enrichment in some ways. Because I'm having that investment from my employer, maybe I feel more competent and therefore I might feel pretty good about myself, and also that esteem is there. If I wasn't getting training on how to use the tools, the sewing machines in this example, then maybe I'd feel a safety issue. One, because I might sew my fingers, a physical safety, and it might be a safety if I don't improve how I make t-shirts, I might lose my job. Okay, so actually we can think about how this might be jumping around in Maslow. Herzberg, maybe another hygiene factor. Again, standardization is rules, it's procedures, and at least I know what's expected of me. Without that understanding of what's expected of me, then actually I'm feeling pretty demotivated. There's nothing worse than feeling insecure because of the unknown. You sort of make up your own reality, I suppose. But standardization of tools and techniques, at least you know what you need to do. So if we think about Maslow, maybe again we're on the lower level stuff here, but we aren't looking at the higher level stuff because I'm not really being involved too much in this. So maybe I could recommend new tools if I was experienced enough. Maybe I'm a new hire coming into a factory. I've got experience from somewhere else. Maybe my perception could help improve the productivity in making t-shirts. Okay, without managers talking to me, maybe they won't know. Think about those new staff coming in. So if you see something in a case study that says they've recently expanded the workforce, well, that's there for a reason. Think about that knowledge transfer that using Taylorism might miss out on because the managers know best. Okay, unless they're bringing in a load of new managers, by the way. Think about those different types of workers. Herzberg, well, yes, it's standardization, but Herzberg would disagree that this is a motivator because where's the recognition of that responsibility? Yeah. So where's my voice as a worker? So actually, standardization of processes without consultation can be a demotivator, according to Herzberg. Mayo thinks about the individual attention to those social needs again, a bit repetitive. I'll do it again in the next slide. And remember, it's part of that community. So if the standardization has come from work groups, for example, you get into one of those focus groups, you're having a chat with your managers and you improve things, Mayo would say that's going to motivate workers. If it's from a Taylorist perspective, managers know best, then not. McGregor's theory Y, again, theory Y workers, if they're involved, then great. If they're not, well, where's the recognition of my expertise? Where's that freedom to choose the methods and tools that I know work best? We might see this in some of the smaller clothing manufacturers, maybe something more bespoke being made. So we did a video with a link into Harris Tweed. We talked about a tailor's in London where you can get your suit made for you for, I think, a start from about £6,000. I'm thinking that's a bit more freedom to work with the client. Whereas if I'm designing the stuff that's just being taken off the rack, well, maybe that's more standardized. Theory Y, theory X, again, choose the workers for the situation. Excuse me. So, specialization. Well, again, I've got that job security with Maslow. Theory X, well, maybe specialization as in focusing on a task that is manageable and you're going to train me how to do it well, but you're going to supervise me. Or I might take shortcuts, or I might just not do it. I might get my phone out and start texting my mates instead of actually making t-shirts. So specialization is fine to improve productivity for Theory X type workers. However, if you don't supervise them properly, maybe they just ignore the training. So go careful. So Maslow, again, might get in the way of moving towards. Remember, Maslow says we're motivated to move through the hierarchies towards self-actualization. I'm not sure if he ever says we get it. And if we do, because we're humans, probably it's not self-actualization for long, is it? Because we tend to aspire to something bigger and better. Grass is always greener on the other side as such. So you have to think about how perceptions might change, which level of hierarchy we're on. McGregor theory Y, again, if it's specialization and I'm a theory Y person, maybe I just get bored, which is one of the counter arguments against specialization from Taylor, isn't it? So we have to think about maybe job rotation, if that was one of those atypical questions that we see in exam papers sometimes. Maybe being theory Y, that job rotation keeps me a bit more entertained, and I'm specialised in a number of different tasks as well. However, specialisation in one might be more beneficial. Herzberg could be a demotivator because of the monotonous work, same sort of thing. And Mayo, well, maybe that job rotation, which I was mentioning, is going to fit into Mayo as well. Okay, we don't want that isolation because if I am very, very good at what I do, maybe I'm the only person that is. Or maybe I'm one of a small group of people, and therefore I don't get that social interaction that Mayo says is so important for motivation. Nearly there. Peace rates, we know. We've got the definition there. Peace rate, basic financial needs, so I can afford to keep the lights on and pay my ever-increasing heating bill. Herzberg, well, yes, it's going to be a hygiene factor. Because as long as I'm making enough of something and earning enough money, if I'm ill, for example, and I'm working mainly on piece rate, this is a big demotivator if we think about Herzberg, because I might compare this month's pay packet to last month's, and if it's half as much, I'm gonna be demotivated. Yeah, so it's the absence of money. Okay, you need to understand that money is possibly a short-term motivator. And yes, you can buy lots of shiny things, but you get used to it. Okay, so it might be you need more and you want more. You want a bigger car, you want a bigger house. You decide to have kids and they're expensive. So you need to think about how perception of money changes over time as well. It's not just comparing pay packet between month A and month B. It's comparing your pay packet compared to your lifestyle. Okay, that tends to change over time. So you would hope that you're going to earn more money throughout your life. If not, maybe your lifestyle changes, and maybe your perception of the absence of money might change as well. Okay, McGregor says that money is one of those main motivators. Even though we need to closely supervise these people, or they're going to be knocking out t-shirts with one arm instead of two, maybe close supervision, and they'll be motivated by how many t-shirts they make. Very much Taylorist theory. McGregor Theory X is very much based on Taylor. So Maslow, again, think about the higher level stuff. It's not just about pay. Herzberg, yes, think about the other things. True motivators would be creativity, recognition, pat on the back from your manager, not just money. McGregor, clearly we're comparing Theory X and Theory Y people here, same sort of thing that we've said before. And it doesn't mean that money is not important. And it says down here, alongside fair compensation. And that's really, really important for you to take on board. You can't say in your essays, money is not important to this person. Okay? If someone is on £500,000 a year and maybe they're mortgage free and everything, the kids have moved out, they've got really good disposable income, maybe they are more motivated by other things, creating new projects or stuff like that. However, it does not mean that they are not motivated by money, because if I take away that £500,000 a year, trust me, they're going to miss it. Okay, so don't come out with these generalizations. They are not motivated by money. They might be less motivated by money because they are currently being paid £500,000. There we go. So a bit of Mayo, and yes, again, we go into competition with other people. If I'm making more than my team member, then maybe the social aspect of it is I'm in competition instead of working with them. It could be that I'm so focused on piece rate that I lose that social interaction. Because if I'm talking to my mate next to me and not making a t-shirt, or I'm making it slower, I'm earning less money. So Mayo would say, because piece rate focuses you more on output per hour per worker, nice formula to remember, then maybe you lose some of that group dynamic. Definitely nearly there. Okay, so Maslow, thinking about managers and planning, safety needs, structured work environment, again, doesn't take you up the hierarchy so much unless you're going to get promoted maybe, and then it will a little bit for a while. Yes, we've got those hygiene factors of making sure we've got policies, and just a reminder of the laziness and dislike of work that we see in the theory X workers there. So if they've got managers planning for them and again supervising them, maybe a theory X worker under close supervision will be very, very good for mass manufacture of clothing. However, we know that workers are capable and willing to assume responsibility, and they crave it. And these theory Y staff, they really, really want it. They want that responsibility, so it's really important. Herzberg, clearly the motivators that are listed on the poster in our classroom. If you think about those motivators, look for examples of them: job satisfaction, responsibility, decision making, job rotation, those sorts of things. Herzberg would say if the managers are planning everything, then maybe you miss out on some of that. Mayo, again, social relationships and thinking about that collaboration that you might not get if everything is led by managers. So here's the pros and cons. And this is a very short list. You should add to this. And if I was you, I would contextualize all of this around the fashion industry. I've mentioned fashion industry in passing, not really contextualized it. Not enough room on this slide to do that. But you need pros and cons for all of these, just in case you get that type of question that we saw where it says either Herzberg or Taylor. And therefore, if you default to your tried and tested, saved, best ways of using Herzberg, Mayo, McGregor and Maslow all at the same time, you're not going to do well in those questions. Like with all questions, just read them. Make sure you quickly plan them. Hook in the question, obviously. What do I need to demonstrate an understanding of? And if you see a question this year, like the Taylor and Herzberg question, don't mention the other theorists. If it says financial, non-financial, which is clearly a favourite, of the examiners looking at the past paper questions, then it's open to you how you use them. But remember, context is king, and don't get too excited with these questions. You need to stick to 1.2 minute per mark. Okay? The hardest skill that you're practicing this Easter is moving on when you have run out of time on a question and not just saying to yourself, 1 more minute.